Okay, Q&A. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the things that I find difficult in terms of having kavanah during davening is the speed at which whoever is leading is going.
Yep.
Right?
With you there.
So the question is, what are some strategies to have kavanah in those moments where like you're trying to keep up?
Yeah.
And what points is it okay to like say, you know what, I'm just gonna like say things slower and be a little bit behind and not synchronize with
So the second question is a halakhic one somewhat, right? Like you know, there are halachos about like what you can and can't respond to when they're ahead, or like, you know, whether you should try to, you know, figure out, try to finish stuff before try to get to a certain, let's say like, for example, you walk in and they are in the middle of one esrei, right? There's halachos about whether you're supposed to start or whether you're supposed to wait till chazar shots, you know? So I'm not going to go through the halachos, you know, but definitely like learn the halachos. I will say though, from an experiential standpoint, then you definitely have to take into account the distraction factor, both in terms of the like audio distraction of them talking, but then for me, I don't know if it's the same for you, there's also like an anxiety factor, you know? And I think many times I've found myself saying, okay, well, I'm just going to go at my own pace. And then the anxiety of lagging behind or needing to catch up interferes with the kavanah, you know? So that's one tip. Another tip is that like, you know, I think there is a good intention that people have of making every tefilah into a great tefilah, but sometimes you just got to like resign yourself to the fact that this is not going to be the ideal tefilah, you know? Another tip, which is not I can't say not politically correct. It's not like, I'm not saying this as a, you know, someone advising halacha, is this is why, like, you know, you should really take advantage of the times when you're not talking with a minyan, you know, and really invest yourself in that. And I think it's easy to like tell yourself that, like, I think there's it is easy to tell yourself that, you know, like to make it into a set thing where like I prefer davening without a minyan, because I could go my own pace, but then you just go as mindlessly on your own as you do when you're in shul. So like, I think being honest and realizing that, okay, if I'm going to daven without a minyan, I really should take full advantage of this and like, you know, make it worthwhile, you know? But I think the standard advice that I have for kavanah in general, of the conservation of kavanah, is a good technique you could use if you do want to keep pace, which is that, like, let's say you know you're not going to be able to have kavanah for everything. So choose certain things that you either naturally have the most kavanah for, or you're aspiring to have the most kind of kavanah for, and like focus on that. You know, for example, when I'm davening a weekday Shemona Esrei with a minyan, you know, then one of the things that I really like can't always do is spend as much time as I want on bakashos, you know? So I will sometimes make the decision to not insert the bakashos that I usually insert for most of the brachos, except for like, let's say Chonin Hadas or something like that, you know? And I will take my time on that. Or let's say, for example, you know, when you are doing the brachos of Kriya Shema, or there's a Kriya Shema and it's brachos, you know? So like, yeah, you definitely have to prioritize like the first pasuk of Kriya Shema and then the parts that you understand. And like, if you resign yourself to like rushing through the brachos, so then that's a loss, but like, that's, you know, you have to pick and choose. So I'd say like just prioritizing is a good strategy. And then the last thing that I want to say right now is that, hold on, I just lost it.
The 9-part series on tefilah that is on YouTube.
Yeah, but that's not really addressing this question though.
I mean, I'm sure. I think it's some of it's the mindset, it's the mentality. You know, it's like
the question was, if you are davening with a minyan that is at a faster pace than you, then what can you do to like make your tefilah the best that it can be? I had one more point. Hold on, just 1 second. Yeah, I can't remember what I was going to say. I guess the takeaway is recognizing, you know, it's almost you have to treat it like a meal, you know, like certain meals you have the luxury of enjoying, but sometimes you just kind of have to scarf down the food, you know, and like if you try to make a meal that you're going to enjoy into a scarf down session, you're wasting potential. But also if you try to do the reverse, you know, like wait, what did I say? If you try to make, so if you should enjoy this meal and you scarf it down, that's bad. And if you should enjoy this meal and you scarf it down, no.
You need to just scarf it down.
Oh, right. You try to like savor it. Then you're going to get frustrated and you're probably going to choke, Yeah. So it is unfortunate. The other thing also, which you don't have the luxury to do at all times in your life is like, choose minyanim to daven at which are suited to your pace. Like I know a lot of friends who during their yeshiva years, not just in yeshiva, but like in general, like defaulted to just being at the closest and most available minyan. And then like when they're in their adult life, sought out minyanim that are more at the pace that they can that they can focus and it's easy to just default,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And just on the left point quickly, is there a good concise area that I can look that'll give me?
Good question.
There's a chakra, no? Don't they talk about at what points you can skip and what you can't?
Okay, I'll tell you where you can find it. You know how in the art scroll in the back they have the summary of the digest of halachos for tefilah?
Yeah.
So they have stuff there. I know about if you get in during Pesukah de Zimra, then what do you do? So I think if you just look up the siman there, I want to say it's like 50. Actually, could you get me an English art scroll? Actually, no, give me a Hebrew art scroll. That might have more sources. Yeah. Also, they're not all located in one place. For example, like I think one halacha that I always tell my students is that is really a good one to know is one of the opening. Actually, I'll read you one of the opening halachos in the shulchan. Let's see here. So it has in this English the Yitzchak Yair. I always want to call it Siach Yitzchak, but that's like the elementary school. No, wait, maybe there is a Siach Yitzchak siddur. I don't know. So it talks about, here we go. It's in Orach Chaim Siman Nun Beis. I guess try that out. Yeah, I don't know if they're all in one place though. That's the only problem. Yeah. Someone should give a shir on that. But let me just show you this other thing. This is a good halacha to know about. Yeah, Rabbi Cinnamon. Okay, let's see here. I know I'm not sharing the screen. I will share it in a moment. I forgot that they changed the structure. Okay. Okay. It's in the first siman. Oh, I just heard an idea from Rabbi Moskowitz on this, by the way, on the opening halacha of the Shulchan Aruch. Yisgaber ka'ari lamod baboker lavodas boro shehehu mo'or hashachar. Okay, so the first opening halacha of the Shulchan Aruch is a person should make himself a gibor in the morning, like a lion, to get up in the morning for the service of his creator, and he should be the one who wakes up the dawn. Okay, which I like that poetic phrase. I don't know what that means, but Rabbi Moskowitz was saying that the Yiskaber Ka'ari is that the I don't know if this is like zoologically true or not, but like he said, an Ari goes from inaction to action instantaneously, like pouncing, So I definitely, with my morning exercise routine of going immediately from bed to floor and push-ups, is a great way to do that, so anyway, but then he says like this is the halakha that everyone should know. It's in. So he goes through like the stuff that people are accustomed to say in the morning. For example, he introduces it with this. Tov ma'at tachanunim bekavana meharbos below kavana. Open halacha on the Shulchan Aruch, Ramah doesn't disagree. Better to say few supplications with kavana than a lot without kavana. Okay, and let's just see what the Aruch HaShulchan says about that. Tachanunim. He just says, so he quotes it. Yeah, let's see here. Let's just see what he says. Because Rabino Beis Yosef, this is in Shulchan Aruch in Chaf Aleph. Okay, so that's something that we definitely don't do. Like that's the tikkun chatos, like getting up in the middle of the night and like doing a churban on the Beis Mikdash, or not doing churban, doing a supplication on the churban Beis Mikdash. Akan lashon v'nir de ala el kai al hashlosh mishmaros v'zehu milashon rush because of al haftish. Okay, we don't need that, etc., etc. Oh, here we go. Tov ma'at tachanunim b'kavana meharbos below kavana. Better few supplications with kavana than a lot without kavana. Akan lashono. Damkin ahach inyan kai al churban beis mikdash. Okay, so Aruch HaShulchan says that that's about the churban beis mikdash. Whom divrei hatur shekasav al hach deshlosh mishmaros v'zeh lashono. But tefilah she's probably also. Okay, he goes on. Okay, kitov me'ad b'kavana meharbos below kavana. Let's say you have an hour to say tachanunim and not more. Lo yomar harbe tachanunim below kavana. You should not say a lot of tachanunim without kavana. V'tov yoser ma'ad uv'kavana salev. V'hu hadin b'chol hadvarim. Kamo b'limut Torah. Same thing with all things. Okay, he doesn't literally mean all things. Now, better to say one parsha of Kriya Shema with kavana than all three without. No, he's not saying that. Ba'amiras tehillim kiyot behem tov ma'ad b'kavana meharbe shelo b'kavana. So the key is to figure out, so there are, just to convert my joke into a serious statement, there are things you cannot truncate. You can't abridge the Shemona Esrei, right? Unless you're doing Havineo and then you got halachos with that. But there are a lot of things that fall into this category of tachanunim. For example, tachanunim, like on long tachanun on Monday and Thursday, then, and I'm not saying this as a posik, but like, better to say a few psukim in tachanunim with kavana than to try to say the whole thing or just say it mindlessly. In our high school in NYHS, what Rabbi Fox would have us do on Mondays and Thursdays is we would do for long tachanun, I think someone would read out loud one paragraph of long tachanun in English, and everyone would read along with it, and then we would just do nefilas apayim, So you got to find out what is in this category of tachanunim, like tachanunim, and see what you have the right to get away with, And again, you got to be honest with yourself. You don't just like, I'm Yosef with one pasuk. Or let's say, for example, Yosef Soloveitchik asked me, I think his lashon was, are you allowed to experiment with Pesukah de Zimra? So I said, you have to ask a posek. But for example, let's say in Pesukah de Zimra, the ikar of Pesukah de Zimra is the mizmorim from 145 until the end of the Sefer. Okay. On Shabbos, then there's a minhag of Ashkenazim, I don't know what Sfardim do, but to add a lot more, but you have to know, is that on the same level or is it not? And let's say, I used to think that Nishmas was kind of part of that, but then I found out that maybe Nishmas is more essential than Yishtabach, or it's like so like you have to look into each sugya and see like what can you truncate, what can you do l'chatchila, what what can you do b'diavad, what can you do in terms of like development in your own thing. It's worth going through the sugyas though, because you also end up familiarizing yourself with why you're doing what you're doing. Yeah.
New
question. Actually, I'm trying to get into this habit. I can never remember what the Q&A, what the questions are, so I want to take notes as we go. The hardest part of the Q&A is remembering what was asked and then writing the sources. So just give me 1 second. So we are on Q&A 29. And so this is tefilah pace. I'm going to go and write this nicer later, but this is Orach, Chaim, Aleph, Daled, and then Aruch HaShulchan 21. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to tell you the origin of this question.
Okay.
I was listening to a share from Rebbe's, and I'll be honest, I was not paying attention to the context because I just have it playing in my car and I don't remember the share. Yeah. So I know I heard him say that it's a mitzvah to speculate.
Sorry, I'm sure there was context. Sorry.
Yes, there's definitely context, and I guess if anyone remembers what year it was, I'm trying to look for it.
Okay.
I'm trying to find it so I can go back and listen to it. But I do know he said because I perked up.
Yeah.
I'm like, what?
That's funny.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
So obviously, I'm not gonna start, speculating, where I start doing a Zara or whatever. But now my question is in Torah, obviously there's a danger to speculate, and if you buy the fact that he did say this, is there an appropriate time in learning or in anything to speculate? Because then I'll give you a basic raya for why I would think that there are times where you can speculate.
Yeah.
And I'm not comparing myself to Avram Avinu right now, but he had a certain I feel like a part of learning, a part of anything is a certain level of speculation. Otherwise, he wouldn't have gotten to where he is right now, where he was, in understanding, Yiddish Hashem.
Yeah.
And obviously, he was a huge Talmud or whatever, like he got to that point. But like, I feel like there has to be some aspect of speculating to get to a certain conclusion. But it has to be, controlled.
Okay, so let me just make sure that we understand. What do you mean by speculate? Or what do you mean?
That's a part of the question, I guess. That's
okay,
part
yeah.
of the question.
So
what does speculation mean?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd say it's thinking that is not based on concrete deduction or induction.
Okay.
But rather based on kind of like letting your mind run free.
Interesting. Okay. That's not what I would have thought, but I hear that how that could be used in that way.
Okay, so I don't know if I like inserting, qualities within the definition of speculation, meaning like thinking without this and that. Right? It's just your mind is freely thinking within facts that you have around you.
Okay, how's that different than what Isaac is saying?
Because it's from how I understand what Isaac was saying is like thinking without, can you say it again? Because I remember there was something that I disagree with.
I think the way that I'm defining it is
based on Rבינו Yona?
Based on a blog post that you wrote about creative thinking versus I don't remember the other category.
Intuitive and analytical thinking?
Intuitive and
analytical. Yeah. I was thinking about that also.
Yeah.
So what did you say again? Because I thought
I said there was I think so maybe like letting your mind run free. And it's like not deductive or inductive thinking. That's what I said. I think that was something about that was probably
deductive or inductive. I mean, I don't know what that means, but
meaning you're not drawing conclusions step by step.
Oh,
I think an essential part of speculation is that you're not drawing conclusions step by step.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think. Okay, fine. So yeah. So I'm not defining speculation like that. I think that's part of speculation.
Yeah, I see the article you're talking about. I'm not going to read from it just to not get drawn in. So I want to first of all just not knowing where this statement is from Rebbe. Everyone should be aware of the fact that the word speculation changed in meaning. Changed in meaning. Okay. Do you know, like for example, you'll see it. What?
The root of spect, which is to look.
Yeah, probably does derive from that. But if you see the word speculation in, let's say, the translation of more Nevuchim, do you know what that means? Or speculative philosophy? No. Okay, so speculative there does not mean, when we say speculative, actually, let me just see if they have both definitions here. Speculative. So let's see, first definition on Google, at least, engage in, expressing, or based on conjecture rather than knowledge, okay, or of an investment involving a high risk of loss. Interesting. Is there an archaic philosophy? Speculative philosophy is, okay, my understanding of it, I don't know exactly who or when this was used. Speculative philosophy, so there used to not be a thing called science. Okay, so if you look at what do they used to call science in the natural philosophy. Okay, so because before like I don't know, probably Galileo, then science was not a rigid empirical discipline. It was like they didn't do experiments. This was, you would philosophize about like the natural world, and that's how Aristotle got so much wrong. So speculation and speculative philosophy, and speculate in that sense means to think about stuff not based on the like speculative philosophy and natural philosophy. Like that's how natural philosophy is you're thinking about stuff that is rooted in sense observations, and then speculative philosophy is not based in sense observations, in ethics and metaphysics, etc. So it could very well be that like what Rebbe meant there is not that it is a mitzvah to engage in like conjecture or like following intuitive thinking. He might have just meant that it is a mitzvah to engage in thinking about metaphysics, Okay, so I just want to grant,
for sure,
right.
Okay, yeah.
So, but then given that, in terms of the question about when is it good to do this or when is it bad to do this, I would go back to the most recent, I think this is our most recent definition of Chachma, Bina, and Das based on Rבינו Yona we did earlier this year in Morning Mishlei. Chachma is received knowledge. Bina is derived knowledge from the principles you received. And then Das, according to Rבינו Yona, is when you arrive at new knowledge, even without new data, and it's a higher level of intuition. So I think the key is you need to know, in your abilities and then in your relationship to this particular subject matter, what stage are you at? Like let's say someone were to open up Megillas Rus, right, for the first time, read a pasuk, and then immediately just start positing things without any evidence or whatever. I'd say that person is not is not ready to engage in Das. But let's say like Yael Ziegler comes up with like a theory about Rus. She is so immersed in the study of Rus that like she can probably come up with theories that don't have concrete evidence and that it's actually like based on something just because of her mastery of the material. So you need to know where you're at in terms of your skills, like methodology skills and thinking skills and logic and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And also like your own emotional ability. We know that there's two types of intuition. There's intellectual intuition and emotional intuition. You have to be sufficiently fenced off from your emotional intuition to make sure that the leaps you're taking are stemming from your mind, and not your wishes. And then you need to know in terms of that particular subject matter, like the Richard Feynman thing of a scientist looking at non-scientific problems is just as dumb as the next guy, you could be very, very smart in terms of methodology of thinking, but if you don't know the subject, then you're not going to be able to rely on your intuition. And I'll say just one more thing, which is, and I've quoted this many times, and Robbie Schwartz doesn't remember saying this, that he said that, you know that you're on the right track when in your own speculative thinking, when like the Rishonim light up along the way,
Also.
Good.
Yeah.
That's two.
So you're on the right, two.
Yeah.
There you go.
So it doesn't mean that everything that you say has to be in the Rishonim, and there are advances in learning that they were just completely unaware of. Like for example, a big change in my learning over these last 3 years has been something that the Rambam started or really championed, which is factoring in knowledge about ancient practices and archaeology and all that stuff. And you're not going to see Rashi doing that. Or let's say in Gush and in other places, there is, or Rabbi Foreman is using modern literary analysis techniques to engage, to mine more material out of the Torah. So that's something that you're not going to see in the traditional Mefarshim, but at the same time, you should use the Chachmei HaMasorah as a gauge about whether you are on the right track or whether you're off. And if you're saying something that no one else says, or that goes against what everyone else says, it should definitely give you pause. And you should say, well, why is it that I'm the only one who's saying this? That was, again, I know your theory has developed a lot since before, and also my position has changed. But years ago when we first had our first Megillas Rus discussion and debate, and you were positing a chet of Naomi, right? And I said you can't just go. And again, I did not know Megillas Rus, right? But I did say you can't just go and take a figure in Tanakh and just posit a chet unless you have if there's no precedent for people thinking about her in this way. You really have to be very bold, in the same way as that Ramban that we've talked about before, that the Ramban saying that Avraham Avinu sinned, the Ramban can say that, but if let's say someone just made that claim, that you got to really be sure that you're on the right.
Right. So which brings me to another point about I feel like when we're in our youth and learning, there's a balance that needs to be had, right?
Yeah.
Either you're too confined and restricted, and you won't be able to be creative. Like Rabbi Zimmer's my role model in learning Chumash, because he's able to free his mind. And being able to speculate. But then again, it's also Chumash in his philosophy, so it may be a little bit different than I think. Halakhically speaking, learning Gemara, I think that
it's much easier to tell. Yeah, right.
That's different, But in philosophy and the Chumash, it's different. It's you also need a balance of, a balance sheet, So I guess the question is like, I think that you can't speculate with grounding yourself. Like when I enter a new area and like I want to speculate, like I feel like it'll free me in developing interesting ideas.
Yeah.
Like one of the methods that I use is, okay, I always ask my Rebbeim to make sure I'm not going to
That's a great method.
I want to speculate because I don't because it allows me to venture and be more creative.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I also have to ground myself and like I expect my Rebbeim to say, no, that's a dumb idea.
Right. That's a very good method. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good method. Another method that I've really only been able. No, that's not true. A method that I've used, more in the last 3 years than before is making every idea that I say public, and like subjecting it to people from different backgrounds to be able to like, to scrutinize. And that also holds me to account, for my ideas. I was gonna say another thing also, which is, I think what we do in Mishle is a good example of a good balance, which is we take a pasuk, we analyze it totally on our own, but then we go to the Mefarshim. And if we just did stuff on our own, that would be irresponsible, And if we just did it with the Mefarshim, that would be not to our advantage developmentally, So we do both. You were gonna add something? You had a different question. Yeah.
I was gonna say just about the temptation to go off on your own and speculate. I think I've seen with a lot of yeshiva guys that they'll start off feeling like they can't say anything, and then once they recognize that they have license to actually think about things, then there's they incorrectly apply the wrong Deos to this and go off on go to the opposite extreme.
Halavai, they were trying to implement the wrong ideas.
Yeah. Well, maybe they're like, oh yeah,
right.
wrongfully applying it.
Yeah.
Where then they become, I'd say, like very brazen about throwing out everything other than their own mind. And, maybe like one source,
right.
And I think it's important to have that balance, like front and center.
Yeah. That's good. And that reminds me, I've been alluding to this to you all week, but this thing in that I said I was going to give Shiran last night, which I didn't end up even getting there. I want to read to you this Rביnu Yona on how to be a Talmid in Shir when you have a Svara. Okay. I think guys should really know this. Oops, sorry. What? Yes, I've mentioned it a couple times. Yeah. So this is Rביnu Yona on Siag L'chachma Shtika. Okay, offense for wisdom is silence. Okay, so Rביnu Yona says like this. Zeh hasiag bein lemidoseha bein l'chachma atzma. So this is a fence both for the midos of chachma and chachma itself. Okay, and by midos of chachma he means like personal perfections that are conducive to getting chachma. So lemidoseh haketzad. So how is it for the midos of chachma? She'ino nichnas l'tok divrei chavero. You don't interrupt your friend, right? Ve'al shelo shama omer lo shamati. And on something that you have not heard or didn't understand, I'm not sure which one it means here. Then you say, I did not hear or I didn't understand. Even though those two things are not included in shtika, even though that last thing is not included in shtika, hashtika mevia lidekach. Shtika will bring you to be able to do that. Okay, now here's where we get to this part. You're going to love this. Siag l'chachma ketzad. How is it a siag l'chachma? You don't speak before someone who's greater than you in chachma. Now, I don't think it means you don't speak at all. I think it means you don't speak before them. Ki halomi bifnei rabo. If you're learning in front of your Rebbe, v'roi svara achas b'halacha, and you see a certain svara in halacha, al yachshov miyad ki hi amitis, meaning you see a svara in your own mind. Al yachshov miyad ki hi amitis. Don't think that it's true right away. Okay, don't want to say it before your Rav has finished speaking. Okay, don't desire to say it before your Rav has finished speaking. He's not saying don't say it before your Rav has finished speaking, because that would definitely be don't interrupt your Rav, but don't desire to say it before your Rav has finished speaking. Because if you don't do this, yafsid mash yomer rabo, you're going to lose what your Rav is saying. You will not know the svaros from the earlier chachamim, which presumably your Rav is going through. Because your heart is restless to make known your own opinion. Okay, I think we're all familiar with that state, right? Okay. Also, your svara will not be able to be so accurate. Ad yishma ma. Let's see what goes here. Ma amru harishonim, until you hear what the Rishonim are going to say. V'yishkol b'mozne sichlo ezo tichshar hazo ozo, and then you have to compare your svara to what the other chachamim are saying. Okay, that your Rav is quoting. Al kain, therefore, hashtika l'tami lifnei harav l'hagadim mimena b'chachma. Therefore, silence for the student in front of his Rav and someone who's greater than him in chachma, siag l'chachma, is a fence for chachma. Uvihimatze svara, and when a svara presents itself, okay, to you, v'harav odenu medaber, and the Rav is still speaking, v'hu shozik, and you're being silent, lo yiftach piv, don't open your mouth, ad ya'iru divrei rabo, okay, until the words of your Rav illuminate you, usvaraso chakuka belibo, and his svara is engraved in your heart, ad gemar hadvarim, and the words are finished. V'yeda mashalim do Rav, and you have to know what your Rav taught you. And then your svara will be clear and accurate. Okay, so I think it's like a very good description of like how you should listen and share. That if you catch yourself with that desire, like I'm waiting for him to stop speaking so I can say my svara, that itself, even though you are being silent verbally, that itself is going to prevent you from listening to your Rav, and you have to wait until the words of your Rav illuminate you, until you know what he said, what he taught you. In other words, just wait until he's done talking. It's not enough. You have to ask yourself, okay, did what he say register? You know, did what he say register in a way where it illuminated me, and I'm now looking at my own svara in light of what he said. You know, now again, shir is a very fast-paced thing, and like you know, like sometimes like you know you can't like it's better for you to voice it your svara in shir, even though it's not fully developed, than to like keep it in. You know, like you have to take all those into account. But I think the midah is the thing that is good to take into account. Yeah, Isaac.
I have a different question.
Okay, before you do that, I just want to say one thing also, which let me just put the source down. Rabinu Yona on Avos 3:17. When you were talking about listening to the shir in the car or whatever, you know, so I heard a phrase from, was I not? I wasn't sharing the screen. Okay, whatever. A phrase from the YouTuber Drew Gooden. He was talking about why TV is, or why movies are bad, or why TVs are bad nowadays. TV is bad nowadays, and he said that the major streaming services like Netflix and stuff want to push content to a phenomenon they call ambient TV, where you just have stuff that is playing all the time, you know, like not sitting down to watch a movie, but you just have stuff playing in the background all the time. So I think there is I just want to coin the term ambient Torah, you know, that I think there is a thing. I think there's a thing where like we feel like in order to listen to a shir, we have to like sit down and like really like listen to it. There are advantages to just having Torah as the background as opposed to some like nonsense. But the disadvantage is what you're describing, you know, which I'm not saying you should or shouldn't do that. I'm just saying like, you know, ambient Torah is a phenomenon.
I feel like by nature, if you're in the car, like there's going to be a certain level of passiveness.
Definitely, and you know, truthfully, in a base midrash where like there's lots of conversations going on, it's going to be a similar phenomenon. You're going to hear snippets of things that are being said in other chavrusas with other contexts, and like you might like misunderstand the context. Okay, Isaac, new question.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to ask the question in a stronger way than I mean it.
Okay.
Yeah. So yes. I feel like there's like a certain like narrative that's pushed of what that I've heard like pushed of like Torah is the path to happiness.
Yeah.
And anything else is not a path to happiness. And even if someone says that they're happy and seems happy, they're lying, or they're like,
right.
Or you know, they're deluding themselves.
Yeah.
And I guess my question is like, where does that come from?
That's a good question. Yeah.
As a thing, you know, asking it stronger than.
Yeah. Where does what come from?
The narrative.
The narrative.
Yeah, the narrative. Yeah. Right. So okay, definitely, Torah is for our benefit, right? And definitely, if you're living the best life, then you will experience happiness, whatever that even means, to a greater extent than you would without Torah. Okay. However, I think that there is often a mistake in what people mean by happiness. Okay, and I said this, I think, in my in that series I was doing for Aish of the philosophy answers, that like, to my mind, there's like happiness with a lowercase h and happiness with uppercase h, and the happiness with lowercase h is my rough definition of what like people in America or Western world or whatever think happiness is, which is, to most people, happiness means there's peaks of enjoyment or pleasure, and most people's view of happiness is maximizing the intensity and frequency of those peaks. They want to maximize being in a state of like good feelings, and maximize how good the feelings are and how frequent it is, and eliminate like the lower the troughs. Yeah. So I think that is not what the Torah means by happiness, and that's not what the philosophers meant by happiness. The closest definition of happiness that I have is what the Rishonim refer to as hatzlacha ha'enushis, is human hatzlacha, which I don't think success is a good word, but the best Greek word is eudaimonia, or like human flourishing, which is where all of your needs are you're a human being that has physical needs, psychological needs, and intellectual needs. And there is a hierarchy within your nature. There's like the higher part of your nature, which is your tzelem elokim, and then there's like your body and your psyche. And happiness is when you achieve a balance where all of your needs are being satisfied harmoniously in a manner that allows you to actualize your potential as a human, and that will feel good, but it's not defined or identified by the peaks of pleasure. In fact, first of all, the pleasures that you're going to have, that you're going to experience through life, are much more of an even keel than high highs and low lows. Like a lot of the pleasure that people get from the high highs is when you satisfy a fantasy, or when you can't satisfy a fantasy. When you do an action that is a kiyum in a fantasy, you get this super high, like this is great, but you're going to have fewer of those when you go on. And also there are going to be things that are not pleasant that you have to engage in, like avelus is not pleasant, inui is not pleasant, So, but it's good for your growth, and it's able to make you be more in line with reality in the long run, which by in line with reality, I mean like living according to truths, not delusions, and acting in a way that's in line with your nature and not contrary to your nature, So like I do think that the Torah is promoting that type of success. But the question is, can you have that without Torah, and to what extent? The answer is 100% you can have that without Torah. The only thing is that that's not something you want to bet on. Okay. For two reasons. One is God created man and gave man a system, and the system that he created is more reliable than like you try and figure it out on your own, or you rely on what other people figured out. So, and it's a system, right? Also, the fact that Torah is not just for the individual, but it's for creating a community around these values. And I don't think you can attain, I think it's a very rare person who can attain this type of happiness on their own, not through the community. So I would say that like, it is, look, Avram Avinu did it without Torah, arguably, Socrates did it without Torah. There are people in history who did this, I don't know how many, but it's extremely rare to do that. And I think also when people like point to someone and say, well, that person is happy and they're not following Torah, I do think that there is a like, first of all, you don't know what's going on in that person's internal world. And that doesn't mean that you should posit that they're like a turmoil of like problems inside, but like, you really don't know. And it's very easy to project onto other people, there's a modification of the idiom. I heard this from Tim Ferriss. I don't know who said it. The grass is always greener on the other side because it's fertilized with BS, and so it's, there is reality to that, but there are people who, Rabbi Moskowitz called evenly keeled, who like that their emotions are not, they don't have extreme emotions to one way or the other. That's like what Mishlei calls the Tom, and those people are going to experience more of what America calls happiness and more of what the Torah considers happiness than the average person, because they're not caught up in their neuroses and their conflicts, But are they truly fulfilled as a human being without Torah? I don't. It's again, it's hard to say, but like the odds are no. Yeah.
So I have a specific example that was prompting me to think about this,
Okay.
which was I recently finished an excellent book called
4,000 Weeks.
Yeah, and the way the author talks about the way the author talks about living a life where you have a more accurate understanding, like a better way of relating to time.
Yeah.
Seems like a much like happier life, in whichever way we're defining that.
Yeah.
And so I was like, like kind of like how does that like fit in with like this type of with this narrative?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was like the prompt for me, like thinking about this, because that's something that's where a person's not like sitting and learning Torah,
Yeah.
just relating to the time better.
Yeah.
But like it seemed to me like a true thing,
Right, definitely. So just to comment on that, I mean, first of all, I think there are two aspects. There's sur ra and aseh tov, right? In general, but I'm saying like in this question, and I think that it is, you'll find a lot of people who are actually very good at the sur ra, even if they don't have the Torah's idea of the aseh tov.
What is that?
Depart from evil and do good. Those are the two types of perfection you can work on, or two like modes, I guess, So like that's a perfect example. It's like people use their time and relate to the time in all these destructive ways, and this book is very good at getting people to remove themselves from that ra, even if it's not promoting an idea of tov that's in line with Torah. Secondly, is even when people are promoting a type of tov that is not in line with Torah, if you use that as a means to an end, that could still be beneficial. For example, the Stoic Jew podcast, like I don't think the Stoics have the same idea. I mean, I know that they don't have the same idea of the tov that the Torah does, but a lot of the things that the Stoics advocate as an end can be used as a means to furthering the Torah's end, or same thing with Buddhism, same thing with psychoanalysis. There's a lot of these things that are promoting a tov that just because it's not in line with the Torah's tov doesn't mean that you can't gain from it. You can use it as a tool, So I think that's like another healthy way to like orient yourself towards people like giving strategies.
Okay, yeah, because it seemed to me to be like disingenuous to claim that someone who reads 4,000 Weeks and understands it and internalizes the insights is gonna not be happier in a real way.
Yeah, right.
Like,
they will be happier.
like
Yeah, right.
peaks of pleasure.
Yeah.
But like, in a more like like raising the baseline.
Yeah.
Type of way.
Right. I also want to add that I think that many times if you find yourself or if you hear someone else saying like, oh, that person is not keeping Torah, they're not really happy. Many times that's just their own insecurity about their own Torah lifestyle. And if you feel that, you have to use that as like a prompt for introspection. Like, why am I so eager to paint myself as though I'm having like this great life and to say that this other person is not, I think it is coming often from that or from jealousy, like plain jealousy. Yeah.
Yeah. Just a couple of points on this. Like I feel like, like what about a non-Jewish person who doesn't have the Torah, like he just holds Shemitah and Noah and
right.
He lives in Yerushalayim, he lives in Israel because, for whatever purposes it has that, like, even like obviously there will because of the Torah we have like a higher quality of happiness versus this guy, right? So I feel like there are different levels or qualities.
Yeah, I mean that was the first point I made, which is that that like the odds of that guy getting happiness or living a happy life are way lower without Torah than with Torah, but it's possible to get certain aspects of the happiness, Yeah.
Okay, fine.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's good. All right, thanks for coming.